Hey guys, and welcome back to another edition of the Wrestling Stoop with the legend himself, Bob Roop. I am your co-host, Ray Russell, here to join in on the fun as we go back in time yet again to 1976 and the Florida territory. Last week, we talked all about Bob's time working with the Orton family in that epic feud against the Grahams, the Briscoes, and the list goes on. But as the summer heat begins to pick up, we're in a brand new feud now. This week, it's all about Bob's infamous feud with Steve Keirn. And I guess you could say the entire Keirn family. Bob taking shots at Colonel Dick Keirn, and we're going to talk all about that and so much more as we break it down. Bob Roop versus Steve Keirn, going to look at everything that goes on here from beginning to end. One of the legendary feuds in Florida wrestling history. As far as emotion goes, it can't get much hotter than this. And in order to tell the story, we're going to bring back on one of the men involved in said feud. Right now, let's welcome back Mr. Bob Roop.
Well, it's good to be back, Ray. I always enjoy spending a little time with you and then reaching out to, our listeners out there. Again, it's that connection that makes us work. It's kind of a network. And even though I don't know, who's out there listening, I have kind of a mental kind of an umbrella thinking about people listening to our work and enjoying it, being able to, that they show interest in, what we're producing and my career, of course, and your great ability to dress it up to where we can actually tell it, most of it anyway. So, yeah, it's good to be back.
Well, right out of the gate, once again, got to thank Barry Rose for that great work he did. The article he wrote about your time with the Ortons and the feud with the Grahams, the Briscoes, and the list goes on. And of course, we're going to use, I said the word use, we're going to take another great article that Barry Rose wrote in regards to your feud with Steve Keirn. And we're going to go through that as you tell the story of your feud with Keirn back in 1976. A big chunk of today's program, all about that epic feud back in the summer into the fall of 1976 between Bob Roop and Steve Keirn. And before we get rolling with today's episode, I also want to thank the great Pete Letterberg, who shared a few pictures with us. Oh my God, talk about a trip back in time. Pictures of Bob Roop in the ring alongside Bob Orton Sr., alongside Bob Orton Jr., taken from that time period. I wasn't there. I wasn't even alive yet, Bob, but I felt like it transformed me back in time to 1976, looking at those pictures, and I posted a couple of them online. I want to thank Pete so much for sharing those, and hopefully we'll get a couple of Keirn pictures coming up this week as well.
Yeah, thanks, Pete. That's real nice of you.
Bob, before we get rolling this week, we recorded last week, and just before we recorded was the passing of the Wild Samoan Afa, and just a couple months prior, Sika, the other half of the Wild Samoan fame. Both brothers now have passed away in just a 2-month time period, a 2-month span. And I wanted to touch on that. And then we got another thing to touch on here. And then we'll finally get into the story going back in time, your feud with Steve Keirn. But I know that you spoke highly of the Samoans in the past. You got to work with them some across the ring and on their side as part of the Mid-South territory. And I have to imagine you probably ran into them a couple other times in your career as well. But did you have anything you wanted to add here after the passing of both Afa and then Sika just not that long ago?
Well, just that they were good guys, good talents, and, very believable, very capable, had great careers. Both of them, I think they're family members. I'm not sure who went before them, but I know that their descendants got into the business too. They did real well. They were good people. For me to say someone is good for the wrestling business, they have to also be good for society. You can't be an axe murderer who, when he gets out of prison, goes into the wrestling business and makes a big name. I don't consider that like a real tribute to the wrestling business because of what it took to get that notoriety. But these guys, killing somebody. But these guys, they were legitimately tough. But, they were a little bit different. Maybe it's because they were both mature men when I knew them. The younger Samoan gentlemen that I ran into, some of those guys were still feeling their oats or feeling their way along, and they could be very intimidating. If they didn't talk to you or didn't say much, looked at you when you're talking to them. I told a couple of stories before about working with Ole Anderson and having a couple guys, put not the fear of God, but they set chills up and down my spine. One-on-one with either one of them was going to be a load, but I didn't have a chance against both of them. So especially when the fight started with one of them standing behind me, I wasn't going to have much chance probably to even get out of the starting gate. But Afa Sika were good guys. They had great careers. I feel like they were a positive addition to pro wrestling. I'm not fully conversant or knowledgeable about every detail of their career, but from what I knew of it, they were a compliment to the business. They were much more positive, and they brought a lot more than they took. Let's put it that way. So they'll be missed. I'm sure their family misses them and their friends. I hope there's a lot of people out there like me who, when you think about certain people, you have different reactions. Like what kind of reaction you get when you think about them. I know when I think about those guys, I remember them with affection and respect. I hope that's your general reaction.
All right. Well, we certainly appreciate you saying a few words here about Afa and Sika. Now, Sika passed away, I believe, back in June. Afa just over a week ago. So just 2 months apart, really crazy. Brothers really did everything together. I mean, that was a unit, right? And the story goes, if you believe the legend anyway, that they used to attend the shows at the Cow Palace, and Peter Maivia would get beat up, and nobody ever informed Afa and Sika that it was a work. So they constantly tried to save Peter Maivia. These heels feared these fans, Afa and Sika. The security feared these fans, Afa and Sika, until finally somebody came up with the idea, Peter, you got to get these guys trained. Just put them in the ring, please, before they kill us. And that's how the story goes anyway, that Afa and Sika broke into the business. But the rest, as they say, was history. They held tag team titles from coast to coast, worked multiple times up there for Vince Sr., Vince Jr., and the WWF. It's the tag team champions up there. Of course, you got to work with them down there in the Mid-South with Bill Watts. They were the champs there. So they were always on top whenever they were brought in, mostly as heels, sometimes as baby faces. It's unfortunate that generation of the Samoans have passed. But, we have the next generation and beyond now. There's plenty of them on WWE TV. I think there's like 7 or 8 of them right now on WWE TV.
Well, that Samoan, going back to Peter Maivia, the chief, being a tough guy. The kindest, nicest, and gentle guy. But he was, believe me, he was respected. And if you mess with him, I'm sure anybody who got him on the wrong side of him.
It was something about those Polynesian guys. They always seemed to be the nicest guys, at least of that generation, you would hear tell of, but you didn't want to get on the wrong side of them.
Right. Well, it brings out a story. When I was doing my Neha Singh thing in Florida, it was Leah Maivia was running a show in Hawaii. Mm-hmm. And she brought out me and Kevin and Mark Lewin. Kevin Sullivan, Mark Lewin, and myself came out and worked. We did a 6-man tag or what. It doesn't matter what we did. What happened was afterwards, we were out in the parking lot looking for Lewin's car. Lewin lived over there, so he had a vehicle there. We're looking for his car. Lewin's looking around like he's nervous about something. And I said, well, what's the problem? He said, well, there's this Samoan guy that's been hanging around the matches. He said, that guy, I don't want to get on the wrong side of that guy. Because we were healed, we were healed of what we did. So we look, we kind of think I was thinking of somebody like Peter or somebody. And so as we were leaving, we go by and Lewis says, oh, there he is. I looked over and there was a guy who looked like he weighed about 180 pounds. Now, he looked kind of fierce, but he wasn't big. He wasn't like humongous big.
He wasn't Mark's size.
No, he was, even Kevin weighed about 240. Mark was probably about 250 at the time. I was 250, 260. And there were 3 of us. It's like we're running from this one guy. We're trying to get out of there before this guy, finds us. And I said, well, what's the deal? He said, it doesn't matter. He said, even if you can beat the guys, you're going to get hurt. There's no way you can beat them and not get hurt. And it's one thing if you can start a fight by hitting a guy with a baseball bat from behind. That's one thing. But even, I don't know, with this guy, maybe Lewin wouldn't even have risked that. Hey, well, if I don't knock him out, he's going to kill me. The 3 of us were scared of that guy right there you're talking about. He said, you don't want to mess with these guys.
and that was maniac Mark Lewin talking. Think about that for a minute.
And then there was another story about and I don't want to say his name, but about a pro wrestler getting smacked around by a Samoan I don't know if it was a wrestler, but just Samoan beat the crap out of a wrestler at McDonald's or something up there. They had that warrior mentality. It was part of their, like, it's like kind of like the samurai tradition in Japan. Samoans had kind of a warrior-like mentality in their culture. But Afa Sika you didn't see any of that with them. You saw it with their descendants, their children, other Samoan families who brought in the wrestlers into the business. Afa Sika were gentlemen and good talent. They did very well for themselves. I had a chance to spend some time with them one weekend. We went to Oklahoma for something, and I shared a motel room with them for a couple of days. Because normally you didn't get, when you're working just in Louisiana, you didn't stay over much, very seldom, so you didn't have a chance. Yeah, they were good guys, and they'll be missed. But I'm glad we could talk about them, with respect, and tell them to rest in peace.
Well,
I think when you talk about rest in peace, maybe when you're talking about someone who has a really checkered path, maybe that's hard to say, because they were anything but peaceful in their life. But with those guys, and again, I don't know about their private life, but I think in this wrestling, but in the business, telephone, telegram, tell a wrestler, if they had done anything really outrageously horrible, I think we'd all know about it. They'll be missed.
Well, that's we really appreciate you sharing just some memories and whatnot, and a nice little Hawaii story thrown in there in the mix as well. Another passing that happened just a couple days ago, Sid Vicious, a.k.a. Psycho Sid, Sid Vicious, Sid Justice, call him what you want. He was always Sid. And it was many episodes ago, you randomly blurted out a situation which you had with Sid once when you were working, for lack of a better term, an agent underneath Ole when he was booking WCW in 1990. And you said something, and I'm paraphrasing here, but something along the lines that with Sid, you didn't know what you were going to get. You kind of gave him a finish, and you didn't know if he liked it, if he hated it, or if he was going to strangle you in 10 seconds. So I love that story when you told it. And you started to tell me another story here off air. And unfortunately, I'm sitting here smiling as I think of this because I grew up on Sid. So I loved him for what he was in the ring. It wasn't a masterpiece. You weren't going to get a 5-star match, if you will. But at the same time, he brought an intensity like no other in that era. And even as a bad guy, that made him cool to me as a fan growing up. And so you started to tell me a story. We lost Sid earlier this week. He had been fighting cancer for years. And I believe I read something about complications with COVID and cancer that may have played into his passing just this past few days ago. But I was a huge fan as a kid growing up. You couldn't deny the intensity. You believed when you saw Sid. The WWE coined the name Psycho Sid. And I think sometimes you couldn't tell if it was the character, if it was the real life man. And then you started to tell me a story off air. And I said, whoa, I've never heard this one. So I wanted you to share it here with everyone else and me as well.
Yeah, okay. Well, I think we worked a show down near Biloxi somewhere, and we were in New Orleans the next day. It was like a Sunday. Sid and Cosmo Missouri, the Iron Streak, were both pumping weight. They were working out every day they could, and they arranged their schedule so that they try to get to a town the night before so they could sleep in and get up and work out, because it's difficult when you have to drive 300 miles. You don't want to work out before you go. And then once you get to the town, even if you're there early, it's hard to have the energy to work out. So what they wanted to do was get a night's sleep and then get up, have breakfast or whatever, and then go work out. And then they have the rest of the day to relax for the matches that night. So they were going to drive from Biloxi to New Orleans that night rather than wait and fly out the next day. They were going to drive that night. They rented a car, and they were going to drive that night so they could get into New Orleans, say at 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, and then they could get a room and get up and go work out. Well, Buddy Landell apparently bummed a ride with him, and so I knew about that going on. So the next night in the dressing room, Sid was walking around kind of muttering to himself. Now this is the next night. And kind of muttering to himself. And, I asked him, I said, what's going on? was pissed off about something. He said, "Oh yeah." He said, "Oh yeah, I'm pissed off." He said, "Yeah." He said, I had to restrain myself from killing this guy." I said, "Really?" I said, "What happened?" He said, "Well," he said, "Sheik and I," he told me a story. "Sheik and I were renting a car. We're going to drive to New Orleans, and Buddy Landell comes up and asked us if he could ride with us. And we told him okay, but we really didn't want to. But, you know, he's one of the boys, so we said okay. But, you know, we're going to drive to New Orleans. And so don't be, you know, bitching and moaning about stopping or anything before we get there." So Sid said, well, even after we told him that, he said, we got 50 miles down the road. He started talking about he was tired and he wanted to just stop at the next hotel, get a room, go on the next day. He said, yeah, he said, he almost got killed 3 times. He said, I had to save him. I had to save him 3 times. I had to save him. I said, what do you mean? He said, well, he said twice. He said the Sheik, Buddy Landell, was in the back. He just kept whining about, oh, I want to stop. I'm tired. And, you know, Sheik twice told me to pull over. He was going to pull Buddy out of the car and beat the crap out of him, which he could have. Or she could beat just about anybody because he had that great wrestling background. He said, yeah, I refused to pull over twice. He said, I saved his life. I said, well, you saved his life 3 times. Who'd you save him from the 3rd time? He said, I saved him from me. He said, I was going to kill him too, but I talked myself out of it. Well, I heard that. I started to laugh. I thought, well, that's really funny stuff. But when I got about a ha out of I looked up, and Sid's looking at me. He's still got that glower on his face, like he's looking like he's getting ready to say, like, what the F are you laughing about? Because he was serious. He was dead serious. I was going to kill him myself, but I talked myself out of it, and he was dead serious. That's Sid Vicious. You know, rest in peace, Sid. But that kind of intensity. He was serious as a heart attack. He meant every word of it. He wasn't making a rib. So I thought that story kind of encapsulates Sid Vicious in terms of his mentality. Not to put him down, but, you know, years later, he and Arn Anderson got into some kind of beef that cost them both, $100,000 of what in their contract. They got in some kind of fight in Europe or someplace.
Right.
So he was different. You know, he was a real character.
He was intense in the ring and outside, it sounds like. I think it's safe to say.
It was fun, too, in a way, though. The one story I did tell you about was when he and Luger were for Ole. Well, he and Luger were every night. They were the same match, you know, different town. They didn't have the internet yet. You couldn't check on it, what every town was doing like you can now. So they were doing a DQ, and Sid was getting beat via DQ every night. So Sid came to me with the idea of doing something different. And I checked with Ole, it was okay with him. So we got together. I said, so Sid, you were talking about doing something different. What do you want to do is different? So he gave me the finish, which Luger wasn't going to get his hand raised. I think what it was, the match was going to get thrown out as opposed to Luger getting his hand raised. Mm-hmm. It's going to be like a double DQ. And Ole didn't care. So Sid tells the finish, and I'm looking at Luger. I said, well, I don't have any problem with it. What about you, Lex? Luger was still a mark to the business. He liked getting his hand raised. You know, he didn't realize that's not the end all of being successful.
Right.
Anyway, I was watching Luger when he was looking at Sid and trying to figure out something he might say that would keep him from getting killed. And he surprised me. Geez, he went right along with it. With a new idea.
What do you know?
Oh, he was so conflicted. Yeah, you know, you're looking at them. I mean, you're looking at the two guys. Sid was a little bit taller, but Luger was, with that body, Luger looked, you know, like he could handle it.
Right.
But that wasn't the case, you know. Anyway, that was another Sid story.
Good times.
Yeah, it was very helpful, you know, where you can get a little payback just, you know, by just doing your job. You know, and so I enjoyed that. But rest in peace, Sid.
Absolutely. You know, I grew up on him, like I said, so I was a huge fan. He was here at a department store leading into a pay-per-view back in 1996, and my father took me and my brother down there, And we got to stand in line. Wasn't a long line. We got there early enough, and I got to go up there and meet him. And after watching him all those years murder people in the ring and just the intensity, I didn't know what I was to expect, even as a teenager, what a mark I was. But you get up there, and he's the most soft-spoken man, just a big smile on his face, shaking your hand, and you can barely hear, "Hi, nice to meet you." He talks so low, and every time after that I ever got to meet with Sid, speak with Sid, it was the same voice, just a kind, welcoming guy. And maybe he did calm down over time to a degree, but at the same time, I see what you're talking about, where he could flip that switch, and you never knew what you were going to get. And I think you said to me off air before we went on, Sid was crazy, but he didn't really realize that he was crazy, but you didn't say it in a mean way. You said it was kind of in a jest way.
Oh, yeah. Well, he had this attitude. It's almost like he was a mark to the business, He thought maybe it's half real. But, yeah.
Unfortunate for his opponents.
You talk about a mood change. When he told me that story, he said, yeah, I was going to kill him myself, but I talked myself out of it. I got ready for a big horse laugh. I thought that was a joke. He set up the thing to tell a joke. And I got about half of a ha out of my mouth before I looked at him. And he started to glare at me like, well, you're going to laugh at me? You talk about getting out of a laughing mood I became right. Mr. Sober Pants and real quick.
Oh, I believe it. When you put those names together, it almost sounds like you're setting us up for a joke. The Iron Sheik, Sid Vicious, and Buddy Landell walk into a bar. Talk about some opposites there. But yeah, I just try to picture all three of those guys riding together. But wow, good stuff. And I totally agree. Rest in peace, Sid. Thank you for all the memories for me as a kid growing up watching Sid from his WCW days to his WWF days. And he batted back and forth. He always had work. Even came through ECW there for a very brief spell. R.I.P. Sid Vicious. Thank you so much for the great memories. I'll cherish them forever as a fan. And Bob, I want to thank you so much for sharing some behind-the-scenes stories from your WCW days because, wow, nobody's able to tell those stories but you. You were involved in them. You were in the room when these were happening. So great stuff. We appreciate you sharing them here.
Well, it's nice that I had a little, some cases, very little contact, but I did have some. To where I can, I can personalize stories.
Right.
They're not, not something, a lot of stuff I talk about, things I heard, or maybe, I didn't see directly or I wasn't part of. But the ones where I was actually part of it, I feel better about because I can attest to the fact that if it's embellished at all, I'm the only one doing the embellishing.
Well, those sound pretty accurate to me. By all parties involved. Buddy causing shit. Sid wanting to kill somebody, Luger not wanting to do a job, those sound totally on par with me.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Well, rest in peace. All of them are gone now,
Yeah.
Wow. I don't know. I'm glad I'm still around.
Well, we are too, Bob. We are definitely glad you're here.
Well, the thing is, there's a positive part of that, is that I can do what we just been doing, is eulogize. You were a fan, and, your part in the whole thing was just as important as mine. Now, you might not look at it that way, but you as representing fans, you're taking being a fan to a whole new exponential to about the 10th power level with what you're doing with your historical and, your commemoration of like your history that you created about pro wrestling. You and people like Barry Rose, good friend of mine, Joyce Postian, who's a big historian type of what was during the AWA. Mm-hmm. She was a big Nick Bockwinkel fan and a real historian. Joyce Postian. By the way, Joyce is a photographer. She's got a book out of photographs of when she was 14 or 15. She was the president of the Nick Bockwinkel fan club. And then she'd been friends with Baron von Raschke for years and years and years. We get together every year at Waterloo. She and her husband, Woody Perkins, and Baron Jim Raschke and myself, some of our other members of our little group, we get together and we do all the activities. But then our main nights are for fun, or like on Friday night and Saturday night, we go in the bar. And nobody's a big drinker. We might have one or two beers, but we get together at a round table and share stories and in a more intimate type situation, as opposed to where you're around with the fans. You can't be quite as intimate and talking about personal stories. Mm-hmm. But anyway, I'm glad that we're still doing this.
Yeah, as am I. And unfortunately, just a lot of passings as of late. So, we talked about Kevin Sullivan at length. We touched on the Samoans and Sid, and hopefully that's it for a while, Bob. But we're going to try to turn things around now and change course on this episode of the program. Go back to 1976. We're coming out of your 6-month feud, and you're teaming with the Ortons against the likes of the Grahams, the Briscoes. Dusty Rhodes even slid himself into that baby. But now you're moving on. You got other things going on. The Ortons are still there. They're on the back burner. They're still your buddies, but you're not really working with them right now. They're doing their own thing, and you are doing yours. And we're going to go back to the end of June, I believe it was, 1976. You and Bob Orton Sr. lose the Florida Tag Team titles June 29th to the team of Steve Keirn and Bob Backlund. The following week, you guys get your rematch, but once again, it's Backlund and Keirn going over. Roop and Orton Sr. no longer the tag team champions. So it's time for you to move on, and it all starts on the following week TV, taped just a day after that rematch. It's going to be a television program that people, the fans that watched it back then, will remember forever, Bob. You guys give them quite a show, quite a story to be told, and it's the beginning of your feud with Steve Keirn, taped back July 7th to be aired that following weekend. Let's talk about it right now. Let's go back in time, and we're going to go back and forth. I'm going to get your take, your memories, direct memories from the feud and everything that went on behind the scenes. I'm also going to be reading some excerpts from the article written by Barry Rose.
Okay, sounds good. What I recall is that to start at the very beginning, Steve came to me in I believe a dressing room somewhere. I don't remember where, but it was just me and him. And he approached me about doing this angle with his dad. And I didn't know Steve very well. I don't think even as a babyface, I don't think I'd ever been in a car with him. I liked him. He was a very likable guy. And liked working with him. He's a good worker. We had good match, a lot of intensity. He was very believable. So, that part was good. Our tag match with whoever he was with, whether it was Mike Graham or Bob Backlund, whoever it was, Jerry Briscoe, Jack Briscoe, whatever, he was good. He was held his own. Nobody predominated to make him look like a weak link or anything. He was always very capable and he had the legitimacy. So he came to me with this angle, and I had no idea about his background. So I said, okay, without seeing any footage or anything, I didn't know there was even footage, like tape of his dad. So in fact, I didn't see it till the day of the show. The way we started the TV show that day, they started at the very top of having Eddie Graham and Steve Keirn with Gordon Soley. Steve said something to the effect, I believe, his dad had been gone from the time he was like 13 until he was like 21. And that during all those years, Eddie Graham had been like a father to him and all that. Eddie standing there, of course. And I'm not sure how accurate that was. There might have been, I think Steve might have been friends with Mike, and, Eddie might have had some influence there. But, for the purpose of the angle, that was fine. Like Eddie came across, he was a babyface, of course. So he came across as being, Mr. Nice Guy and Mr. Surrogate Father type guy.
Right. I was just going to say, if you want to, I can set the stage here in regards to where you're about to go with this story. But I did have a quick question before we break the story here and we discuss the entire feud and everything that's about to happen right here on TV that really just sets the stage for weeks, months to come. You said Steve Keirn came to you with this idea, you directly, not necessarily a booker or promoter. Do you remember going with Steve or going on your own and pitching this idea? How did that work back then when you had the ideas like that, a big, huge angle that's literally going to light the world on fire here in the Florida territory? Did somebody go and talk to the promoter? Did somebody go and talk to the booker? If you were involved, did their eyes light up? Did you see money signs in their eyes, or did they no-sell it? I mean, maybe you had no part of it. I was just curious how that part of it came to be.
I went to Jody Hamilton. He was the booker. Yeah, like I mentioned on one of our programs, that I could go to Jody. Bobby and I always talked over our matches before on our way to a town. We'd talk about our match that was coming up that night, and we'd come up with finishes for the match, depending on what was going to happen, what the booker wanted, whether we were going over or whether we were going to go get beat. We always had finish. So Jody Hamilton had gotten in the habit of, I don't say depending, but knowing that he could count on me because of the finishes I gave him were always appropriate. They were as good or better than anything he could have come up with. I'm not going to say better, but it's good. And Jody was smart enough to know that if you let guys do a finish that's as good as what you got in mind, or even if it's not quite as good, if you let guys do a finish that's their own finish, the chances are they're going to do it a lot better. There's a lot better chance of them doing that successfully than maybe taking a chance of forcing them to do your finish, where they might not have the same kind of investment into it to do it as well. So Jody was smart that way. So I went to him with the idea. Now, here's the thing. Nobody had any idea what I was going to say in my interview, because the whole thing was based on a 2-minute interview.
Right.
And nobody said, well, what are you going to say? You said, oh, okay. Jody trusted me because, again, I'm not going to say I was the number one heel in the territory, but I was certainly up there. We talked about the last couple of our programs. I'd had a year. I'd had a year as a single heel, and had worked everywhere and with everybody, single matches with Dusty and Jack Briscoe and, title matches and all kinds of things where I had credibility as a main event heel. And I'd drawn money. Now anybody could draw money with Dusty Rhodes in a single match. You wouldn't have to have a big supporting card. But I think I drew pretty well with everybody. Now maybe in a lot of the cards there, you would have supporting matches. That's something too that would help draw. Would be attractive to fans. But I had a history of that I would be able to draw money.
Well, you had a hell of a track record. I mean, you broke in with people. Longtime fans had seen you break in here as a babyface Bob Roop all the way back in '69, coming out of the Olympics. You returned, you turned heel, you joined Hart's Army. Like you said, you worked on top with the Briscoes, Dusty Rhodes, Thunderbolt Patterson. You would establish yourself basically as one of several main event heels throughout 1975. And you and the Ortons still, I mean, you guys are screwing with the Grahams. I mean, it doesn't get any bigger than that name value wise in that Florida territory than the promoter himself, Eddie Graham. You take out his son. So you're riding high still. I mean, you're coming off that high a little bit here, but you still got all of that heat with you. People know your background, what you've accomplished, what you're continuing to accomplish here at this point in time. Steve Keirn, at this point in his career, he'd only been in the business about 3 years or so. And like you said, childhood friend of Mike Graham, that's legit. He did grow up around the Graham family, and his father was, and we'll get to that in a minute, so we won't talk so much about Steve Keirn's father yet. But so Steve is here in the business. He pitches you this idea, and this is really where you and he both prove that Keirn was ready for that next step. This is where Keirn's career takes a turn for the better, and it just continues to ascend. He's going to become one half of the Fabulous Ones with Stan Lane in the 80s. He's going to make some money there. And so, but it really all starts here for him in this epic feud that we're about to get to. And you're about to tell the story, Bob. But before we do, I think it's very important that we go back and address Steve Keirn's father and kind of give a little background on Steve's father before you tell this story, so people kind of know exactly the kind of heat you were generating when you go out there to cut this promo. So I'm going to take a little bit of excerpt from Barry's article. I'm also going to take some research I did several months ago on Colonel Richard Keirn, Dick Keirn, a retired Air Force pilot who was one of only two Americans, guys, held as a prisoner of war in both the World War II and Vietnam Wars. And during World War II, he was only 20 years of age, shot down in a plane over Germany in 1944, spent a year in a Germany POW camp. You guys might think it can't get any worse than that. Well, fast forward to the Vietnam War. Once again, Dick Keirn shot down July 24th, 1965. And listen to this. He spent 7 years and 7 months as a prisoner of the North Vietnamese. He was even one of the many soldiers, 50 plus soldiers who walked that Hanoi March. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that, Bob. You're a pretty good historian of the world, so you probably are. But for those who are not, basically what they did there in the North Vietnam village was that they had 50 plus soldiers, or POWs, I should say, walk the street. They just wanted to show they had control of these soldiers, these POWs. However, unfortunately, things got out of hand, and many of these civilians began attacking and beating and doing various other things I won't even mention here to the POWs as they made this 2-mile march. They were basically tortured, and you have to imagine for 7 years and 7 months, mentally, physically tortured. I know they talked a lot about starving and things of that nature. So to say Dick Keirn went through hell would be an understatement.
Yeah, and let me address that in terms of what I saw when I met him. And he'd been returned for years and years now. He'd been back. When I met him to ask him about it, I wanted to make sure that he was okay. I mean, not that I didn't trust Steve, but I wanted to know all the particulars. I wanted to make sure that he was okay with it, and I wanted to be just informed about the whole deal. You're talking about some serious stuff here. I'm going to go and knock a hero, a legitimate American hero.
Yeah.
Who's been through hell. I'm going to be knocking him on TV. Could be seen anywhere in the world. I want to know who I'm dealing with. So it wasn't that I didn't trust Steve, but I wanted to meet his dad. And I tell you, when I met him, it was like, I don't know if you saw a grasshopper the grasshopper body's still there, but the grasshopper died like a year ago, and it's still attached to the plant or whatever, but it's empty. Just the hard exoskeleton. It's all that's left. And it's empty. And that's what Colonel Keirn was like. It's because what he said is, he didn't say, you guys have my blessing. What he said was, and he didn't say it in disgust or anything. He didn't have inflections in the way he presented himself. Very low key, very kind of flat, not totally depressed or whatever. But he said, you guys, if you can make some money, he says, that's fine. He says, I really don't care what you do. And what he meant was he really didn't care about anything, because he'd been home for a long time by this time. But that 7 years and 8 months in Vietnam, standing in pits with feces and urine up to your knees and standing there, you can't sit down because they have pointed stakes. There's no place you can sit down. You have to stand there, and they can just pour feces and buckets of crap on you, and standing there and just for like days at a time. He had been through such hell. I read of John McCain's history of what happened to him in that same prison camp, Hanoi Hilton, and I know what Colonel Keirn went through. I have an idea. So the ability to keep yourself alive, not commit suicide or have somebody give you a mercy killing, took a lot of character, took a lot of strength and whatever.
Yeah.
And after almost 8 years, I think he had used up just about every bit he had. I mean, when I met him, not that he was suicidal or anything, but when he said he didn't care, his world got reduced in that 8 years to just one simple little thing of stay alive. Stay alive. You got your family at home. You got people who love you, whatever. Just stay alive, no matter what these people do. Just stay alive. And so the character and the effort, the willpower that took for him to do that, it drained him. So that by the time he got back to where he was living, the effort just to live a normal life, to get up in the morning, have breakfast, whatever, was like that was like a luxury to be able to do that, have the freedom to do that. But when he said he didn't care, I think his value system had been reduced to very small things. He didn't, as far as the way the rest of us think. So he really didn't care. I think that his ability to have enthusiasm about anything was very limited.
It's still kind of crazy too. When I look, his release date was February 12th, 1973. So you think about what he had been through. You can't even fathom, truly. Even if you read it on paper, it's still, without actually going through it yourself, I can only imagine. As you talk about strong-willed, like you said, Bob, but at the same time, I'm thinking we're just over 3 years past his release from Vietnam. Just 3 years later, and he's out here. Well, he's not really working an angle, but he's out here being relegated to, you guys. Well, Steve coming up with this idea, trying to figure out a way to work his father into the story, and you guys are going to do that here. Just a fair warning, but I'm looking at his credentials: Silver Stars, Bronze Stars, Legion of Merit, 5 Purple Hearts. And this whole thing is very timely I don't know if you knew this part, Bob, or not, but Dick Keirn officially retires from the military June 30th, 1976. Here you guys are exactly 7 days later filming an angle involving him.
Yeah, that timing is remarkable. It is, oh man. I'm glad we did it, because again, I wouldn't be sitting here doing it. If I have another life and I'm a wrestler in that life, I hope that enough is left over from this one. If somebody comes to me with that kind of idea, I think, well, nah, I think I'll take a pass on that one. But because it's too much.
Once in a lifetime, right?
Yeah, it was really, I was reading something in Barry Rose's great history of Florida Championship Wrestling. I was reading about another angle that something I think the Freebirds did after Eddie Graham was. Yeah. And it was considered to be in really poor taste.
Yeah, it did not draw. That was not good.
Well, that's why I didn't see it. And like I say, even mentioning that is just horrible poor taste. I don't know who the booker was that let him do that, but with Colonel Keirn, Steve didn't even know what I was going to say. They had no idea what I was going to say. And you want the honest truth? I knew what I was going to say. I did not know. I had no idea how it was going to be received. Mm-hmm. I just didn't have a clue. I mean, I'd been in the service, but I hadn't been in Vietnam, and I had been, from the time I started wrestling, even when I was in college, I didn't watch TV. I wasn't watching the news. I didn't know. I wasn't reading newspapers. So, I mean, I knew about Vietnam. I had one of my wrestling buddies, in fact, George McCurry, who we talked about several times on our show. George was in Vietnam. So I had a chance to talk to a bunch of guys that had been before and after. So, I mean, I knew about Vietnam, but very few of these guys had any personal stories to tell, because it was too nasty. It was too traumatizing. It was too traumatic for them they didn't want to remember. They were all changed by it. They didn't want to remember it. It was all negative, everything that happened to them. So, with Colonel Keirn, I didn't have a clue about what the effect was going to be.
This is Wrestling Nostalgia, the podcast that dives into wrestling history. Hey, wrestling fans, I'm Dave Dynasty, and if you enjoy podcasts that are knowledgeable and history-driven, then Wrestling Nostalgia is for you. With great guests and fun interviews, there are over 200 episodes in our archives. We chat with several first-time guests and often cover topics not discussed on other podcasts. Look up Wrestling Nostalgia on your favorite podcast platform and visit all of our links at linktree/WrestlePod. That is linktr.ee/RASSLEPOD. And remember, wherever you go, whatever you do, be good, be safe, and keep on growing.
Hey guys, Ray Russell here, curator of the WrestleCopia Podcast Network, inviting you guys to listen to many of the programs here as part of the WrestleCopia brand, including, but not limited to, the Wrestling Memory Grenade, currently covering the 1988 and the WWF project. You can also listen to the Regional Wrestling Podcast, where we talk the territories, whether it's Jamie Ward with Georgia 81, Roman Gomez with the UWF in 1986, or Gene Jackson covering Memphis in 85. 3 projects going on right now over there at Regional Wrestling. You can also listen to the Wrestling Stoop with the legend himself, Bob Roop. Bob goes back in time each and every week, covering not just his career, but countless stories and interactions with hundreds of wrestling names spanning his 2 decades in the business. But that's not all. You can also check out the Puro Wrestling Academy with the professor of Puro Resu, Mr. Dan Ginnity. Dan and I go back in time and cover the history of Japanese professional wrestling in the English language. And you can listen to all of those shows and more, all part of the WrestleCopia Podcast Network, located over at WrestleCopia.com. That's WrestleCopia.com, and anywhere your podcast streaming needs are met, from Apple to Spotify, Pocket Cast, and beyond. And while you're at it, why not subscribe to our social media guys for all the latest goings on here at the WrestleCopia Podcast Network. Plus, I'm constantly adding old school video clips and pictures from throughout wrestling history. You can follow us over on X, formerly Twitter, at Wrestling Grenade. That's at RASSLIN Grenade. Also, follow and like me, Facebook.com/Wrestling Grenade. And why not subscribe to youtube.com/wrestling grenade. And of course, now would be a fantastic time to become a WrestleCopia patron. I'm talking about that $5 all access tier over at patreon.com/WrestleCopia. That address again, patreon.com/WrestleCopia, where you get so many gifts for just $5, including all of my insanely detailed show notes for every episode of The Grenade Show, Regional Wrestling, and the Monday Warfare podcast. You'll also get early access to a lot of the podcasts here on the WrestleCopia brand, where you can listen days and sometimes as much as a week earlier than the rest of the listeners. We also offer remastered versions of the earliest episodes of The Grenade Show covering the 1989 NWA project. Includes enhanced sound quality, plus new content and conversation never heard before. But that's still not all, guys. You also get at least a dozen digital downloads for your viewing and reading pleasure each and every month, plus random bonus video drops, and of course, the Patreon exclusive Watch Along series covering many past WWF and WCW events. And if that's not all, videocasts, also now a part of Patreon. And for those who like all of their podcasts in one nice, neat little pile, the WrestleCopia Patreon also offers a Patreon exclusive Spotify account. You can actually go over to your Spotify with your WrestleCopia Patreon credentials. Instead of listening or downloading directly from Patreon, you can go over to Spotify, listen to all the latest shows, including all of the early releases. And you get all of that and so much more for just $5. No subscription, cancel anytime. Give it a try for a month, guys. I think you'll like the content that I offer, and every penny of it goes right back here into paying the bills. So if you're looking to support that next up-and-coming podcast brand, please consider making it WrestleCopia. Help me pay some of the bills to keep the WrestleCopia Podcast Network and all of the great shows here up and running for the months and the years to come.
Hey everybody, Gene Jackson here, inviting you to check out the Retro Wrestling Review, where each week I'm joined by some great co-hosts who help me review classic episodes of USWA Championship Wrestling, and right now we are doing week-by-week reviews of 1993. But we don't just do reviews, sometimes we get a chance to interview some of the people who were there and lived it, plus do watch-alongs. It's a lot of fun, so check out new episodes that drop every Wednesday at WrestleCopia.com. And to find links to everything associated to the podcast, you can go to USWApodcast.com.
So I just wanted to set the stage before we go into the actual angles so we add context to what is about to happen here. And we go back to the beginning of this program, as you had already stated, and then I'll let you take this back over in a moment. But basically
Sure.
what you already said was at the beginning of the program, or somewhere around that part, they come out here and there's an interview somewhere at the beginning of the show where Steve Keirn kind of puts over the fact that Eddie Graham had been sort of a surrogate father to him while his real father, Dick Keirn, had been away for nearly 8 years as a prisoner of war in Vietnam. Now, 1973, the Colonel returns to the USA, thank God, a true American hero, much like G.I. Joe, but more so on the dark side. You know, but certainly thankful, I'm sure. But that's where we set the stage, and I'll let you take it from here. We'll go back to the top of this TV program, and you can break it all down for us.
Okay, well, he was out there with Eddie Graham at the beginning of the show. Now, another factor is that Eddie Graham and I had issues, and Eddie's the one that jumped off the top rope and supposedly broke my leg. So when I'm out there, Eddie Graham's out there talking with Steve Keirn. Steve and I didn't have an angle. We hadn't done anything personal yet. So I went out there like I was talking about Eddie Graham. Let's back up. Eddie was out there with Steve, and Steve was talking about Eddie being like a surrogate father to him while his dad was gone, and, standing in for his dad and all that, blah, blah, blah. And Eddie's making the appropriate things, and he's looking like this great guy. He was a surrogate father for a kid whose father was a prisoner of war camp in Vietnam. So Eddie looks like a great guy and all that. Well, when I got a chance to come out, not too long, within, I don't know, we didn't wait till the end of the show. Not long after that, I came out there. I had gone home. I usually didn't rehearse my interviews. I should have, because interviews are what draw.
I would say that whether you rehearse this one or not, Bob, it got the message across. But before we talk about you coming out there, why don't you tell everybody out there, the listeners, in case they didn't hear it. I know you mentioned this in passing on another episode, but this is the Steve Keirn, Bob Roop feud proper episode of the podcast. So remember they aired some sort of a video of some footage of the video of Colonel Keirn returning from Vietnam. Right.
Yeah, Eddie. They introduced Eddie and Steve. Gordon introduced them. They showed the video of Colonel Keirn, and who's doing the voiceover? Walter Cronkite.
Wow.
Now, a lot of modern day people people in their 30s might not have a clue who that is, but for my whole young adult and adult life, Walter Cronkite was the voice on national television for the news. He was one of half a dozen newscasters. For example, he was the one that did all the rocket launches from NASA. He was the one that did the voiceover for all that, and he did a report on Vietnam, and he was on the war. He was anti-war, and they would show clips on there, and he was 100% correct, because we shouldn't have been there, And that's not my opinion. That's everybody that had anything to do with it, including the people in the government, have said the same thing, that we shouldn't have been there. We made a mistake by even being there.
So they aired this video of and Cronkite's doing the voiceovers. So anytime Cronkite spoke, you knew it was a big deal. You'd listen.
Yeah. So what you see is a plane is landed, and they show Steve and I believe his mother. I don't remember who else was with the family, but and the plane lands, and Steve told me later that he was supposed to wait until his father got off the plane and walked across the tarmac, what about like 50 feet or whatever.
Right.
And then to come to him. But he said as soon as he saw his dad coming down the stairs out of the plane, by the time he got near the bottom, he just took off, and he ran across the runway and met his dad at the bottom of the stairs, gave him a big hug and everything. And Walter Cronkite's doing the voiceover. This, you talk about emotional. I'm pretty sure when I think about it, I think they showed it first, and then they had Eddie and Steve out there with Gordon. They showed that, and then they came back, and that's when Steve talked about Eddie having been like a surrogate father for him. And Eddie came across as this great guy, and what you saw on the TV about Colonel Keirn, made it as legitimate as probably anything that ever been on that TV, on the wrestling show, in terms of import, as far as being legitimate, as far as being something that got heat. Just the fact that he'd been treated that way, made you hate the people, the North Vietnamese that did it to him. Even though, you went back to marching those guys through the street. Well, you've got a bunch of people who've been, some of them, maybe every one of them, have had somebody in their family killed from planes bombing Vietnam, and then you're walking the guys who dropped those bombs through the street. Yeah, some of them aren't going to make it. My father or my mother or my whole family have been blown up, and I'm still alive. And one of the guys who maybe dropped the bomb is walking right in front of me. I might pick up a rock and throw it at him. It'll be a bad time for poor guys. But anyway, so we've got to establish that, the reunion, very emotional, national television, seen all over the country, and a big deal on this local wrestling show, which wasn't seen. This show wasn't seen all over the country. It was seen in other places in Florida, but it wasn't like a national show. It wasn't like WTBS or anything. But what you saw was something very, very legitimate, and it was a perfect setup for what I was going to say. Now, can you think of anything else I should cover before we get to what I said?
No, I think we set the stage pretty good. The video was aired, very emotional, very real. Cronkite's doing the voiceover, so even those who think wrestling's a work at this point in the 1970s have to go, okay, well, this is real. And you're out there basically to address Eddie Graham initially, because you've had your issues with Eddie, recently broke your leg. So Steve Keirn just happens to be out there as you come out there to cut your promo, and then things take a very wrong turn for everyone involved. And oh my goodness.
It was perfect, because I went out there and knocked Graham. I went out there and said, Steve Keirn's out here with Eddie Graham, his surrogate father. Well, my father's a gentleman, a scholar, Why would you want? This is a man that deliberately broke my leg, on purpose. Who would want to claim him as their father? My dad's a gentleman, a scholar, and all that. And so I'm not going to Graham. And then it said, and while we're talking about fathers, we're talking about Steve Keirn's dad being a big hero.
Oh, boy.
Well, let's talk about that for a second. I'm a veteran. I served in the military. And the first code of military conduct, the first number one is I will not be captured by the enemy. That's number one. Now, Colonel Keirn didn't just get captured once. He got captured twice. The second one is if I am captured by the enemy, I will make every effort to escape. So did he escape either time? Did he escape from World War II? Did he escape from Vietnam? No. So he broke the two main articles of the military code of conduct. He broke both of them. Well, I don't consider a guy like that a hero. I consider a guy like that a coward. Yeah.
And that's enough right there. I mean, that was plenty enough right there. But there's another line in there.
Way too much.
Because you harped on the fact that you're so unskilled, so incompetent as a soldier that you weren't captured once, but twice. I couldn't believe that. I mean, I saw it coming. If you're going to tell a dark joke, that's something you could point out there. But my God, I mean, just this entire, and again, you go back, it's a couple-minute promo. What can you, how much heat can you possibly get in just a minute's time? Well, Bob Roop found out here go on, Bob, tell him.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. The way it was set up, the TV was set up, there was a monitor in the studio, in the wrestling office, which was only about 8 seconds from there to get out to the set. It was just a short hallway to go through to be on the set. Now, if the baby faces had to go the long way around, so maybe it was more like 10 or 12 seconds. They couldn't come out the same doorway as the heels, which was right next to Gordon's desk. About 10 feet away was the door from the heels. But the baby faces came out from a door that was in the lobby, which was about 40 feet away. But, as soon as I said coward, that was Steve's cue to take off. So here he comes. And anything I should talk about before we get to this?
No, you basically point out that he broke the codes of conduct. You referred to him as unskilled for being captured twice here. And I do believe the last thing you say that draws Steve Keirn, and I'm not trying to spoil anything, I'm going to let Bob tell it his way, but I think the last thing I believe, according to Barry Rose in his article anyway, that you say is, in my mind, Colonel Keirn was not a hero. He was a bungler and a coward. And that's all it takes. That's all it takes, man. And it begins. Go on, Bob. Tell them what happens next.
The hair on my neck standing up. Think about myself saying that back then.
It's got to be hard.
Well, so, it was arranged ahead of time. So Steve's going to come out the desk and attack me for saying these things about his father. Of course. I mean, you've got to. The people know he's on the scene. They saw him about 15 minutes earlier. So here he comes, and he runs by the camera, and the camera jerks. It wobbles. It's one of those cameras that you can push around.
Floor camera, yeah, the studio floor camera.
Studio, yeah, you could move it around, and it's got a big ring at the bottom to keep it from tipping over. Steve ran by that, and what happened is he hit his ankle. He was running a path. He didn't take into consideration that ring at the bottom. So he ran close enough to the camera that he hit his ankle against it. And he wasn't sure, he told me later, he wasn't sure if he broke his ankle or not because it went numb. And he just launched himself. Gordon and I are standing behind that little desk thing. It wasn't a desk. It was like a little stand.
Right.
There was a chair behind it for Gordon to sit in. He just launched himself, and that went over. And on top of me, and Steve's on top of me, and he's, screaming, and I'm throwing pencils. Gordon had all these pencil stuff on his desk. I'm throwing stuff up in the air.
Visual effect.
I know the camera can't see my hands. And I'm throwing stuff up in the air, and I'm yelling and all that. And before, it didn't take 5-10 seconds that Orton Sr. and Bobby Jr. Were out there, and they pulled me out of there. And Steve got up. They pulled me out. They did it in a way that they got me out of there before Steve could do anything. Well, when Steve got up, he told me later that he wasn't sure if he broke his ankle or not because it was still numb. And when he got up, he wasn't crying, but he was in pain. And that's what made it so effective, because his voice was had kind of a muffled sob in it. It's like he said, Roop, he said, you can pick on me, but leave my dad alone. He suffered enough. He's like crying, he's like sobbing.
Wow.
My dad suffered enough. Leave him alone. Oh my God. I got back into the room where I could see it. I could see his interview. I saw the last part, and Jim Barnett's back there, and Jody Hamilton are the two other men in the room. Well, men. Two other people in the room, men and women. So Jody turns around, Bobby, he said, son, if you aren't armed now, you better get you some quick. And Barnett's walking back and forth going, oh, my God, Bobby, what have you done?
Oh, my boy.
What have you done? He's walking back and forth like, well, I just set the building on fire or something. What have you done? Because he knew. You're talking about.
Well, they had seen everything, right? I mean, Jody had been around forever, but Jim Barnett had been around since the beginning of studio wrestling. He invented studio wrestling. So
yes.
He'd seen just about everything, doing all the crazy stuff he did over in Australia to come back and lose his mind at this. Even he knew what had just happened out there was not your typical wrestling angle.
Oh, yeah. I remember a show, I've mentioned this before, but I remember a show when I worked in Australia, and that was just when I was there. I mean, I was only there, maybe a total of 6 months out of his years and years and years of being there. So I only saw what I saw during my 6 months. In one town, it might have been Adelaide, I can't remember, it doesn't matter. It was a movie theater type place. Lewin and Curtis fought all the way out of the arena, up the aisle, out in the street. They're out in the street in front of the movie theater, fighting in the street. And about half the fans were out there with them. I remember Lewin running Curtis on the side of a bus. It stopped. It got stopped by the people who filled up the street. Yeah, I thought, man, how could you possibly do something like that when you consider, lawsuits and things?
Right.
It's like somebody's got to get hurt, people running back and forth. You got little kids and old people at the matches. It's hard for people not to get hurt sometimes with that kind of stuff. So I'd seen Barnett do everything. And I knew he'd done everything. So the fact that he's going, oh my God, what have you done? I was getting a very alarmed feeling.
Yeah, and Jody Hamilton telling you better get yourself armed, Bobby boy. And then Jim Barnett losing his mind. I can picture myself in this room seeing all of this go down. I've got to ask you, do you remember Steve Keirn coming to the back after this? And did you guys speak immediately after this angle backstage, like, holy shit, what have we done? Or, man, we did great. Do you remember talking with Steve immediately after this?
No, I don't.
Okay.
I don't know if he expected what I said, but I know that he liked it. Again, we had cleared it with his dad. I talked to him at length to make sure.
Well, you're a veteran yourself, so obviously, right.
Right. I was comfortable with that. I mean, again, but there was another thing too. I don't know if it was that day or maybe the next day. I had a girlfriend we were living together. We had a home in Land of Lakes, about 15 miles north of Tampa. She worked as a hostess at the Air Force Base, Elgin Air Force Base in Tampa. She came home, the TV was on Wednesday. She came home, it showed on Saturday. So she came home like maybe the following Monday. And she said, what did you do on TV? I said, why? She said, I was today, they had a party come in, and these guys are talking and yelling and screaming about your name. They're talking about finding an anti-tank grenade, the kind of big grenades that blow up, put in the ground that when tanks go over the top
right,
of
blow up the tracks of the tank.
It blows the track off the tank. Now you're talking about that's the heaviest thing they could find that they could carry. They're going to find our house and throw it through the window. I said, oh, so really? She said, yeah, that's what they were talking about. And of course, I realized I told stories in the past about guys one guy pulling a gun on me, and just me and him in the parking lot. And I turned around. He's 10 feet away, got this gun pointed at my head. I just turned around and walked away from him. What are you going to do? So, believe me, it was way, way too much. But that's the reason we're still talking about it. I did other angles that were, plenty hot, but, they were hot in what wrestling fans are used to seeing.
Right.
With a certain framework. How many times you have one of the ingredients of an angle be something like what happened to Colonel Keirn? You don't have that. It's one thing if you get somebody's mother on there on Mother's Day and you end up slapping her around or doing something terrible to her. I mean, don't do it to the real mother. You do it female wrestler who's posing as a mother or whatever. But, that's one thing. But, to take, have Walter Cronkite, any angle introduced by Walter Cronkite is a good one. Yeah.
Jim Cornette always said that anything that comes out of the box is going to get over. I think any angle that starts with Walter Cronkite got over, right? So there was one angle that started with Walter Cronkite and it got over. So I think it hasn't been proven otherwise. Unfortunately, you guys weren't able to use any other footage from Cronkite to get any of the stories going, but man, it worked this time. And really, it was your promo. I mean, it was really everything made sense. It was all put together so well. You didn't even come out there specifically for Keirn, although Keirn and Backlund had recently dethroned you guys just a couple weeks prior of the tag title. So you had a little heat with him, but not like the personal heat you had with Eddie Graham, who had broken your leg. You've been feuding with him for basically the entire year up until that point. And you pivot over to this feud with Steve Keirn. And within a week after this airs on TV, the very next time you guys are in, Tampa, they throw you guys in the ring together, and excellent idea here. Double disqualification, no contest, if you will. I wouldn't have guessed anything else out of that. I can imagine Keirn hitting the ring, and really the action probably, I won't say the action never got going, but the match probably never really got going. I'm sure he was lighting you on fire there the first week, July 13th. But then you guys were the semi-main event immediately after that angle. It only took 1 week after that before you guys became the main event, the show, that story. It wasn't getting any hotter than that. Didn't matter who was on the card. I'm sure Dusty loved this.
I hated it. But, that's fine. I mean, he ended up getting, by whatever, let's put it this way, whatever heat Colonel Keirn put on me, Dusty ended up taking for himself. So it worked out for him. The thing is, I called him before like a heat vampire. There was any heat anywhere. He was like Count Dracula, the heat. He was looking for it. He wanted to suck that neck and get all the heat out of it. But again, I don't hold that against him. That was smart on his part. If I was at his place, knowing what I know now, I would have done the same thing. So how can I say that I don't like what he did? I wouldn't make egregious comments to the people who are putting me over. Along the way, I would be a lot more diplomatic about dealing with people who went out there and laid down for me. But especially if they could kick my butt,
I would think in this instance with this angle and the way Jody realized it, the way Jim Barnett realized it, obviously top talent that know what they're watching, like a Dusty, also realized the heat that was just got for this feud between you and Steve Keirn. There was likely some jealousy backstage, I am sure, that you guys got plugged into such a spot just out of the blue, really. I mean, you hit one little angle. That's all it took. 2-3 minutes. You cut a promo. Steve Keirn attacks you. He comes up, tears in his eyes, cuts that emotional promo, and tickets are flying off the shelf for these events. You guys go to Tampa. You do the double DQ. What do you do after that? You got to bring it back. Lights out, guys, this time. No rules. Everybody in the ring. Steve Keirn on one side, Bob Roop on the other. Tampa, July 20th. What happens? Count out victory to Steve Keirn. You have to only imagine. We all can tell what happened here if you follow wrestling. Bob Roop ran for the hills is what I'm seeing here when I see Steve Keirn defeats Bob Roop by count out in a lights out match. I'm thinking Bob Roop didn't stick around for the entire butt whipping.
No, I always went down to the ring. I always went down to the ring first, and Steve would come to the ring, and by the time he got halfway down the aisle to where he could see me, he took off. He started running. He hit the ring, and he didn't wait to be announced. He hit the ring and tore into me. I mean, he no bell or anything. He just tore into me, and the referee would ring the bell. Well, he'd pound the crap out of me, but I mean, I'd try to stop him. Maybe I'd stop him briefly, break his eyes or whatever, and try to take over on him. And it was perfect because I remember one of the first matches being a lights out match, and I got the impression that it got added after that booking got added after we did the angle. All the shows are booked 2 weeks ahead, so you can promote them on TV.
Mm-hmm.
They're already booked. They're in the book. Jacksonville, we know what the match is going to be 2 weeks. So this angle started out, they didn't think it was going to be that hot. They had no clue. It was going to be like red hot, white hot, atomic bomb hot, so quickly. So in order to take advantage of it, it seemed to me, I thought the first match we had in Tampa was a lights out match, and I thought they added it to the card afterwards, after that TV show. Now, I might be wrong there. I don't know if even doing that was possible, but that's one way you can take a match, even if you already have the card where you say you have Dusty against Stomper or Paxson or whoever, it doesn't matter. If you want to have a match, how do you add it? You make a lights out match, which isn't, no rules and all that.
Well, you guys had worked to a double DQ, so it seemed like a good idea to add that lights out stipulation. You guys are actually closing the show here. Again, I don't know if that was an audible call, like you said. Oh my God, these guys are, really getting some heat here. That was something else. We got to keep this thing going. We got to add a little bit more to the fire and lights out. So you can't be disqualified in this instance, but you run away. So even if the referee's not counting to 10, at the very least, Bob Roop's not returning. It's pretty obvious. He's headed for home. So Steve Keirn gets the Duke on July 20th. So what do you do when the heel keeps running away? Well, you bring it back next week inside a steel cage. We are 3 weeks into this feud, and you're already working Steve Keirn inside a cage. And on July 27th, Keirn going to finally get his first big-time win over Bob Roop inside that cage.
It made sense because the intensity of his heat, the first time we got together in the live shows after that TV, we couldn't go long. I mean, it didn't make sense to go 10 minutes or even 5 minutes. We didn't need to. Steve needed to get some payback on me to stand up for his dad and what's right and good in the world. But we didn't want to have him kill. We didn't want to have him beat me and eat me like. Yeah,
you didn't want to blow it off within a month's time. You guys wanted to stretch this thing.
We didn't want to have him Dusty Rose me and leave me laying there, after the first show. They knew to draw it. I have constantly evolved and looking at back in this history, which I never did before you and I started working together on our program. And what I'm seeing, a lot of the results, what I'm seeing is Eddie Graham protecting me from Dusty. I know Dusty was in the office whenever he needed to be taking care of his own bookings. Well, for example, we talked about it last week. Me and Bobby against Dusty and Eddie in Tampa, and we beat him. Beat Dusty Rhodes, even if I'm sure we didn't beat Dusty. We might have, but I doubt I would probably beat Eddie. But, even Dusty being on a losing team was very unusual. Usually whatever he was in, he predominated. So, yeah, that was telling. But I think Eddie was protecting me because he was smart enough to know that Dusty's thing wouldn't last forever. And I was a wrestling heel. I was like more of a Malenko Johnny Valentine type than a Dusty Paxson Stomper type. I was a wrestling heel. I could do it. I can't see a Stomper or Paxson doing an hour Broadway like a Dory Funk Jr. Maybe they could, but not if they did their style. How do you stomp and chop guys for an hour, without killing them? So Eddie wanted to protect me he figured he was going to have me down there forever because I started there, and I was loyal to him till we know what happened. When I went opposition, he had to renounce me, of course. Right. Which was fine. Oh, I don't blame him, but Eddie was looking after me, I think, on these bookings because he didn't want me he didn't want me to come out of this whole thing and just be nothing, to be totally beaten and where I'd have to stay away for a year.
But I think this was so white hot that it was a good call booking wise to give Steve Keirn some revenge up front, right? It wasn't just like the typical heel keeps getting over on the baby face every week, because I don't know how that would have worked with the fans. And this particular, this is a different animal we're working with storyline wise.
We would have killed Steve if we did have him. If I managed to stop him, like poking him in the eye or something, it was only for like a second. And I'd grab him, I'd go to do something to him, and he'd just shake it off and tear into me again. I would try. I would do my best, my best to try to stop him, but he would stay stopped. And that was perfect. We didn't even have to talk. We just went out there and just played it.
Boy, I wish I could have been just one of those matches, man. I would have loved to have just felt the heat from the crowd, the intensity, the response from the crowd as Bob Roop's bumping all around for Steve Keirn coming for family revenge.
There's nothing better for a heel than to be getting the crap beat out of you and have people screaming how much they enjoy it. They're just loving it. They're just screaming, yeah, kill him. You say, hey, I've got heat. I've got some serious heat here. And this is what these people paid to come see. They didn't pay to come see Steve Keirn just come out there and do push-ups. They came to see Steve Keirn kick the crap out of Bob Roop. And Bob Roop's getting the crap kicked out of him. And these people are loving it. They're getting their money's worth. Look out there. Everybody in the building standing up, screaming. Well, that's pretty heady stuff. For someone I'd done well. I mean, I've been a single heel. Yeah, I had a lot of heat, but not at that level. In fact, if I had not established myself as a heel, I wouldn't have gotten that heat. It would have been cheap. But the fact that it would have been cheap heat. But the fact that I was legitimate in terms of my background, and I established myself there in Florida as a legitimate wrestling heel. I mean, I was tough. I'd go out there, and that was part of my heat. I didn't really need to cheat, but if I'd have persevered, but I would take shortcuts because maybe I was lazy, maybe I wasn't in good enough shape or whatever, but I took the shortcuts, and that's where I got my heat. Yeah, to go out there, we gave the fans their money's worth. To go 5 minutes the first time we were together was a big mistake because, again, as soon as Steve saw me, he had to charge. He had to come get me. And we knew that. We both knew that. And, I let him pound the crap out of me. I would stop him. I had been top heel there for, a year and a half. So, I mean, I had enough ability to at least stop him somehow. And I might have stopped him by hitting him with a high knee, or he even went down. I picked him up. Now I'm going to beat the crap out of him. Well, he takes a punch or two, and all of a sudden he's that anger, that fury.
Yeah, the crowd comes in glued all over again because he's already feeling that rush once again. That adrenaline's pumping.
Yep. I mean, as soon as he got his breath back, it's like hell with being hurt. I'm going to kick the crap out of this guy.
So initially, here in the results, Keirn goes over, as he should have, in that cage match, and you talked about lumberjack matches. You guys do that in a lot of cities as well. Eventually, now you're going to continue on TV, reaffirming what you had already said, doubling down, basically. This is America, freedom of speech. I speak my mind, and, you continue on the same propaganda you had already pushed in regards to Colonel Keirn, and now his son Steve Keirn in the mix. You have a lot to say to Steve, and I found it funny as I was reading results here, because you talk about Jim Barnett being backstage. Oh, Bobby, my boy, what have you done? Well, it didn't concern him enough to where he didn't have you booked to the Atlanta City Auditorium down there for Georgia Championship Wrestling. And you guys are going in there cold, so there's no doubt that they aired some of this footage from Florida on the TBS television program, because you guys are third from the top. And while you're main eventing already here in Florida, that's still a pretty big deal because you're walking in. Remember, Georgia, guys, was its own territory. They already had their own top stars and storylines. You guys are working only underneath a no disqualification match between Abdullah the Butcher and Mark Lewin, and a taped fist match between Mr. Wrestling 2 and Dick Slater. All 4 of those talents already in Georgia, 2 big gimmick matches. Steve Keirn and Bob Roop not even in the territory, and you guys are third from the top there. Just one match, a one-off in Atlanta, but I thought it was funny how Jim Barnett, so concerned he had to book it down there at least one time, Steve Keirn going over.
Yeah. I'm curious what was running in Florida that night, but, well, Barnett had points in both promotions. But, yeah, we went up there, and you know, our match got over, but it was the same thing. We didn't go 10 or 15 minutes, I don't think. Steve was going to be as mad up there as he was in Florida. A lot of intensity, and he was good. You know, he was believable. People believed he was really, you know, why wouldn't they? You're talking about a serious angle, you know, where your father's been suffered enough, and, you know, some guy's trying to make him suffer even more. I saw that we were booked up there too when I was looking at the stats. I was trying to remember the payoff. I was wondering if the payoff was any better than it was in Florida. Sure, Steve and I should have been making, I don't know, $3,000 a week, easy. But we probably were making less than 1,000. Oh, yeah.
Just for the angle alone, you guys, so not only bring in the box office, but just, you know, I mean, out of appreciation that, you know, you guys, your, not so much Steve's, but your neck was on the line. Yeah. And that's where I wanted to go to next in this story, because I know the story's been told in the past by you, and it's in Barry Rose's article as well, about your run-ins with some of the fans here outside of the arena. Yeah.
Yeah, it was dangerous. I'd had several experiences. I talked about the one where the guy in Miami, where the guy was waiting in a parking lot, and I walked by him and I heard this click, and I had to blow your brains out. Turned around, the guy's pointing a military 1912 .45 pistol, 45 caliber, pointing it at me, and, you know, right at my head, 10 feet away. You know, I managed not to foul my britches, but it was close. What are you going to do? I mean, you know, that's one of those moments where time either speeds up or slows down. You know, what I was going to do. I just turned and walked away from the guy. I did have a rational thought. Those pistols, I fired them when I was in the service, and those pistols are very, very difficult to hit anything unless you really, really, anything more than 10 feet away. As hard as it is to believe, those pistols are very, very difficult, because I practiced with them shooting at targets. If you were more than 15 feet away, even if the target was like 4 foot tall by 3 feet wide, sometimes you wouldn't even hit the target until you got used to. And the origin of these pistols, by the way, the military at the time were using 38 pistols, where their traditional firearm was a 38 caliber. They got in a war in the Philippines where these indigenous natives of the Philippines that they were fighting, or a lot of times they weren't armed with pistols. They had knives and spears and clubs, and they were fighting them like in the jungle, in the tropical area. And what would happen was that these guys would charge, and what they were doing, they were using, I don't know, ganja or something, some kind of drug that had them hopped up, and so they would come charging, and you shoot them 6 times with the 38, and you hit them every time, but it wouldn't knock them down. They would still be able to get to you and hack you with their machete or stab you with their spear. So they needed a pistol that had more stopping power, and that's where this 45 came in. So it didn't matter if this was designed to shoot a guy who's about 6 feet away, who's charging with a knife or a spear, and you shoot him 6 feet away, you're probably going to hit it. And when you hit him, it's going to knock him back about 4 or 5 feet because of the power, that 45 caliber. So that was the kind of pistol that was facing me. So I did have some methods of my madness in turning and walking away. I felt like if I got more than 15 feet away, he wasn't going to be, even if he did shoot me, shoot at me, he wasn't going to be able to hit me. But I'm telling you, those first 5 or 6 steps, oh my God. Talk about the hair on your neck standing up. I had another one. It didn't have to do with Keirn, but Mark Lewin caused it. we're in a tag match in Tampa. You know, the times you get shot at are hopefully few enough that you remember them. We did a deal. Lewis tied in the ropes, and I saw him. He was waiting. His right hand was like hanging outside the ropes, and what he's doing is waving his hand like, come on. He's waving his right hand, and he's facing away from the audience, but he's waving that right hand like, come on, like the come on gesture. And what happened is a kid in the audience, or a young man in the audience, jumped up on the apron and was helping Lowen get loose from being tied in the ropes. Well, as soon as I saw him, I ran over and smacked him because, you know, you can't have people getting even on the apron.
Sure, right.
You can't have fans getting in there. And unfortunately, I didn't hit him in the nose or the eyebrow or the mouth. I hit him in the cheek. And I can't say I was aiming. I knocked him off the apron. In fact, he landed on his feet. He didn't even go down. So, okay, we went on and had the match. Later on, when I pull out of the Armory in Tampa, when I pull out, somebody's following me in a van. So I'm going down, I don't know the name of the street, Dale Mabry, whatever. I came to a place where you could get up on the highway, and I acted like I was going to keep going straight. And at the last second, this guy was hot on my tail. He was getting ready to pass me on the right. I took a left up on the highway where he couldn't stop in time to go up on the highway. So I'm up on the highway, and there's an access road next to the highway it's about 20 feet away, and it's about 10 feet lower. And I'm hearing this noise, this popping sound. I look over, and this guy's leaning out of the driver's side window of his car. In his left hand, he's got a pistol, and he shoots at me.
Wow.
Now, I didn't hit the van, so maybe he was firing blanks. I don't know. I do know that as soon as I saw that, I got out of that lane, got moved over as far as I could. I checked, make sure we could run into anybody. But as far as I know, the guy was shooting a gun at me.
Wow.
Yeah, we don't. Who needs that kind of crap?
Whew, man. Man. Oh, man. I don't. Bob, you get into some serious predicaments sometimes.
Well, that was totally uncalled for. And, Mark.
Oh, for sure.
Mark, I know you're still around. He's been laying low. I saw him not long ago somewhere. But Mark was weird. He did stuff. This was long before.
That's another guy who was weird in and outside of the ring, from my understanding.
Yeah, he was different. He had a pretty interesting career.
For sure.
And he did well. He made a lot of money, but he was different. I never did get to know him at all.
Wow.
Even when we were working together as Mayhouse sang in the Purple Haze, he never came out of character and talked.
Mm-hmm.
So that's all right.
Well, to get back into things here, I'm looking at results. You guys basically go one-on-one for all of July in Tampa, and then you guys call in the troops. Now, let's not forget Steve Keirn is one half of the Florida Tag Team Champions, going to have to defend that title sooner or later. And August the 3rd in Tampa, Keirn teaming with Bob Backlund to defeat the team of Bob Roop and your good buddy, Bob Orton Sr. You guys, the former champions out here, you can't seem to get it. This is the third time you've lost to Keirn and Backlund, but they're going to bring it back the following week, August the 10th, and it gets even bigger. How's that possible? You got to call on the American Dream, baby. I bet he told you guys that he sold this house. He probably got the biggest payday out of the 6 men involved, as it is Backlund, Keirn, and Dusty Rhodes over the old Bob triad, Orton Sr., Orton Jr., and Bob Roop, all back together again, but they can't get the job done. Babyface is going over again, and it's somewhere around this point in time in the middle of August. You guys take your feud to West Palm. You guys hadn't really been working against one another in West Palm up until this point in August, so they're adding you guys to the West Palm Beach stops now in regards to your storyline. It's making the rounds to the different cities.
Well, I'm not surprised to see Dusty in there. Like I say, that he would draw Dusty like a moth to a flame. So yeah, but you know what? Again, to his credit, he didn't try to eat us all.
Right.
I know Senior wasn't gonna go for that. And Bobby and I were able to overcome it just by, even if we got bounced around during the match, we'd do something. Even if it was on TV the next week, we'd do something to get our heat back. But yeah, good matches. Now you introduce Dusty into a match where you have if you had Keirn and Backlund, you could have a wrestling match. Maybe say against me and Bobby, you could have a good wrestling match. You could get holds and have guys be fighting out of the hold, and you follow them back into it, illegal tags, all kinds of crap to get your heat. But when you introduce Dusty, it's hard to have a wrestling match with Dusty involved because he can't just stand on the apron. And if you got him in the ring, you can't put him down and get a hold on him. I mean, not for very long. Maybe you hit him with a gimmick and then, pass Nux or something, and you go try to pin him and he kicks out, and maybe you grab a hold then and work on it and tag in and out, keep trying to beat him down. And Dusty was smart. He'd stay on his feet, get up on his feet where he could be seen, and he looked more
imposable,
more imposing, right? I'm not surprised that he was added to the mix. Like I say, he was part of the booking. So if he was in that match, he wanted to be in that match.
The tag team matches will continue on for the summer here. Lots of you teaming with either of the Ortons, taking on Steve Keirn and Backlund, chasing after those titles. But at the same time, people have to remember that feud is still hot between you and Steve Keirn. So you have to imagine there was a lot of Bob Roop trying to duck out of the ring anytime Keirn was inside. So anytime Keirn was down, if you tagged in, talk about getting some heat when you were working Keirn over. But also vice versa, all of those times in the match where Keirn just keeps getting so close to getting his hands on you, and you tag out like a coward or whatever the case may be, or pointing over, you tag in Backlund. I'll get in if Backlund gets in. So I see all of that playing out here. Great heel shit. You have to use your own imagination, guys, because we don't have the footage. I wish we did, but just lots of great stuff. You guys make the rounds everywhere. Miami, Fort Lauderdale, you're all over the place. And this is going to continue on all the way through September. And then everything going to come to a culmination of a Texas death match. What a way to, I won't say it ends the feud, but this is the big blow off as far as I'm concerned in results anyway. And it looks like Steve Keirn going to get that epic victory over Bob Roop one final time, and a Texas death match, getting revenge for the Keirn family legacy, if you will. And that's okay though, because much like the Cowboys booking, you can lose and still get your heat back. And we'll talk about that as we close the show, because you will get your heat back just over a week later as you move on to a completely different storyline. But what a year 1976 has been. And it only took a 2-minute promo and reaction from Steve Keirn to generate 3 months of selling quite a few tickets, I would have to imagine, to all these different towns throughout the Florida territory, in one of the hottest feuds in Florida wrestling, the territory era of professional wrestling in general.
Yeah, I agree. I was a booker. I created a lot of angles, but never anything that hot. When you can use personal, or you can use family, and when you have a legitimate family member who's suffered greatly, like Colonel Keirn, that you can take advantage of. I look at it, I want to say, as a blessing. I'm glad we did it because, I survived it and everything. And, we didn't, I should add this. The last thing I did before I left Florida, and actually I was a little bit of a seeing into the future about my days was in Florida. But the last time I left there, I apologized for that angle on TV. I don't know if it ever played or not. I know it got taped, but I apologized to Colonel Keirn because, and I didn't talk like a smarten up the business.
Right.
I didn't expose the business. I just said that, in my younger days, in my youth, I was, sometimes unfeeling and unthinking about what I did. But the one thing, if I regret anything, it would be that he had suffered enough. And I apologize for it anyway, because by that time I'd become to realize I went way too far. But
it only took you a few extra years from everyone else who was watching it live in real time. I realized I went too far. I kind of see what you're saying there. You were still in character, but literally you were apologizing on TV if it aired, which was a really classy thing to do. I can see that eating at somebody like, you know what? I just got to set the record straight for anybody who might remember that or whatever went on. And it's kind of interesting. And I touched on this just a couple minutes ago, because you guys come out of your feud and you're both rechristened immediately into new storylines. You are going to go back with the Ortons and injure Jack Briscoe. I think it was Jack. So you're going to start working a new angle, a new story with the Briscoe brothers. So Bob Roop staying right there on top, going from the Grahams to Steve Keirn and now up to the Briscoes. Meanwhile, as you finish up with Keirn in the early part of October, it's not a month later that Keirn, fresh out of that main event very first main event program with Bob Roop, Keirn going to capture his first major singles championship October 30th in St. Pete at the Bayfront Arena by defeating the Assassin, Jody Hamilton, for the Southern title. And you talked about the Assassin being the booker. Obviously, Jody realized that Keirn had earned that spot, earned the right to become a singles champion. So that says a lot that Jody went in and kind of penciled Keirn in as his successor to the throne there.
Yeah, and that's good. You tell me that just now, or telling our listeners that just now. I wasn't aware of that. I didn't see it. I hadn't seen it. That's really good, because Steve was languishing in the underneath card, and some of the matches we had with him, we would be third from the top, or maybe even second. But the main event would be Dusty against Superstar, Paxson, or whoever. And that would be the main event. If we were co-main event, it really didn't measure up until we got some heat, because Dusty would have heat going to these matches.
Right.
Whoever he was with, he would have already bled for him, or they did something on TV, that was horrible.
Sure.
Or something in a house show that they taped and they played on TV that was horrible. So, they had an angle. Dusty always had an angle in his match that promoted it that we didn't always have specifically, because, Bobby and I worked with Mike Graham, and Mike had 5 or 6 different partners. He had Eddie, he had Jack Briscoe, he had Jerry Briscoe, he had Steve Keirn, he had Bob Backlund. He had a bunch of different partners. And if we worked against Steve, he had a bunch of different partners. So we didn't have like a tag team that we were against, that we had a real serious angle with, serious heat. We were getting by and drawing because our matches were exciting, and we were able to get heat during the match. And what that heat translated to was that when the babyfaces made a comeback, us bumping all over the place, that's when the fans got off. That's what they paid to come for. That's what they paid to see. That's what they came to see. And I'm not saying that we were the only ones doing that. I'm just saying you could count on that in our match. That's why you could book the match even a little cold, because we had established MO, the way we did things, our matches, that the fans knew they were going to get that. They knew that it was going to be exciting.
Right.
They knew that, they were going to see a lot of action. Bobby was low key, and it was hard to see him being diabolical, whereas I was the exact opposite.
Right.
Everything I did, I was.
You had no problem showing that Cheshire Cat smile.
I always said I was more intelligent than everybody. I remember my interviews against Dusty. Look, I'm a college graduate, and several degrees. As a youngster, I was tutored, private tutors, had the best teachers in the world. And I'm going against Dusty Rhodes. I don't know if he's got even finished high school. The way he talks, I don't think so. But, right. My father's PhD, college professor, independently wealthy. What was his father, a ditch digger or something like that? How could you back a guy? Why would you want? Well, this, you want your kids to grow up to be like Dusty Rhodes? Or would you want your kids to grow up to be like me? Success story. Had everything. Wouldn't you want your kids to be like me? Well, those interviews got a lot of heat.
Right.
Because people say, no, I don't want my kids to be like you.
Well, you talk about maybe sometimes you could go in cold because people knew it was going to be a good match anyway with you and Orton versus a variety of baby faces. Well, it doesn't get any hotter than the feud you just had with Steve Keirn. People talk about wrestling heat, heel heat, heat from a feud. This is what they would call white hot heat, at least certainly the beginnings of the storyline here. Yes. And that's why Jody Hamilton said, boy, you better go get yourself a weapon. You got to arm yourself after this one, Bobby.
You're not armed now, son. You better get armed. Get armed.
I can see.
I've already heard his stories.
Yes.
He talked about being chased out of town 20 miles an hour with people shooting at him.
Yeah.
I got this guy telling me to get armed. I thought, oh, my God.
He knows a thing or two about it, right? Yeah. So what a fun time. I want to thank Barry Rose again for his article. I did use that for research as well as various other things I had to look through and sift through results and various websites. And always thank you, Bob, for recounting your memories, the history. You were there. You were part of this. And very few people got to play a part in this story, but you were certainly one of them. And man, to relive this here in a couple hours of storytelling was a fun time for me. Again, thanks so much for bringing this to life for us. And we'll continue on. I guess next episode, we'll close out your chapter here in the Florida territory. Look a little bit closing out the year of 76, going into 77 before you leave for San Francisco. Look at some of the things you did. And maybe we'll play a little name game, some word association. I'll throw some names at you that we really haven't touched on here. Maybe you didn't necessarily work with them a whole lot, but I feel like you may have some stories into some of the characters from this time period. So that's kind of the plans for the next episode. Tentatively, guys.
Sounds good. You know, you're thanking me, but, you know, the credit, you're the one that produces a show and formats it and all that. So while I'm heavily involved in content, we couldn't make it happen without what you're doing, Ray. So I want to thank you in front of, you know, and where our listeners can hear that we wouldn't be able to do with this without your input, the way you've got it arranged, and you managed to keep me somewhat on track. I have a tendency to wander off into the jungle, different places, but you always bring me back, and it's been fun this week remembering those were heady times. You know, that was in the prime of my life, and believe me, I'm very happy where I am right now. I'm still alive at my advanced age, and I have all these good memories to think about. And the ones that you're bringing out I didn't think about my wrestling career for 30 years. I just didn't think about it much because I was involved in life, raising my kids and being a husband and a father. So to be able to come back in such a way and revisit my career, you talk about what a privilege. And I want to thank you personally for making it possible.
Well, I'm just happy we continue to do this. And we're coming up on our 1-year anniversary in a couple months, and it's just been a blast so far. We've got so much more to talk about still. Certainly a lot of the stuff you did throughout the 1980s, a little more, hopefully some more stories there from your time working with Ole in the office of WCW. So, I mean, there's a lot still to touch on. And of course, we haven't even got to the tip of the iceberg when it comes to the Knoxville era. So stay tuned for that, guys. It's coming this fall here in 2024. You guys don't want to miss that stuff. But Bob, appreciate you again this week, and looking forward to doing it again next time.
Well, thank you, Ray. Staying back at you, and for our listeners out there, thank you very much for taking us with you. Again, we talk about Ray and I are praising each other here, but we couldn't do it without you, because if you weren't interested in what we're doing, there's no reason for us to be here. So thank you very much. Everybody, please stay well.
All right, guys, that's going to wrap things up here this week. But I encourage everybody to go out there and friend Mr. Bob Roop over at Facebook.com/PoorBobRoop. And you can find me, Ray Russell. Follow me on X, formerly Twitter, at Wrestling Grenade. That's at RASSLIN Grenade. Also, follow and like me, Facebook.com/Wrestling Grenade. But most of all, I encourage everybody to go over to Patreon.com/WrestleCopia. That address again, Patreon.com/WrestleCopia. So many great gifts there, including early show releases, digital downloads, video casts now available, and so much more. Check it out over at Patreon. Help support the brand. And until next time, on behalf of Bob, we ask you guys to hold tight and see where we head next time. Right here on the Wrestling Stoop with the legend himself, Bob Roop.